What's going on, everybody? I want to welcome you to the Tom Rowland Podcast, brought to you by Star Brite and How To Tuesday, brought to you by Danco. Today, we welcome a third partner into the show. Bernowin is going to help us to bring you this series called Anglers Unite. What Anglers Unite is all about is how we can unite together to move the needle on things that are really, really important to us. Take water quality, take regulations. In this situation, what we're going to talk about today, we're talking about Florida's Amendment 2, which could possibly grant fishing and hunting rights as a constitutional right for you. But we're not going to be able to do any of these things if we're off in our own little groups, paying attention to the things that are only interesting to us. It's very, very important that as anglers, as fishermen, hunters, we unite with our voice. Today, we have Travis Thompson, who is from All Florida. It's a conservation organization. He is very knowledgeable about Amendment 2. And if you don't know what Amendment 2 is, I urge you to listen carefully to this. But like I mentioned before, Amendment 2 is a proposal to grant your hunting and fishing right as a constitutional right. Travis is going to explain exactly what that means and what the difference is between them. But this is going to happen on November 5th. The same day you go in to decide who the next president is going to be, you will have the opportunity in Florida to decide on this. We're going to talk with Travis to find out exactly why you would consider voting yes or no. We're not here to tell you which one to vote on. You make the decision for yourself. That is coming up here. Also, if you like this particular podcast and all of the information that comes with it, I would love it if you would forward it to a friend that would also benefit from this. And anyone that holds a fishing or hunting license is going to benefit from this. And finally, if you like it and you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give it a 5-star rating and review. Those are incredibly important, and I haven't asked for them in a long, long time. But I am going to get back on asking for those because it does make a huge difference in how many people see the podcast. And when we're talking about something like this Anglers Unite, this is a very, very important series. If you could do all those things, that would be great. Now we are getting ready to talk to Travis Thompson from allflorida.org, and here we go.
I'm Travis Thompson, conservationist, executive director of All Florida, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
Travis, what's going on, man? I'm glad you're here today.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's nice to meet you in person. Interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, happy to be on here and talk about, all the conservation work we do, and obviously this year, Amendment 2 in Florida.
Yeah, so tell me about your organization and what you typically do. And I know Amendment 2 is what we're ultimately here to talk about, but tell me about your organization and what you do.
Yeah, so All Florida was created, I started it about 3 years ago. And the idea there was I work on conservation issues, or we work on conservation issues at the state level. I'm a fifth generation Floridian. I care deeply about Florida. I'm in love with it. My dad was a DEP employee, so don't hold that against him or me. But for 45 years, my dad was a DEP employee. And so I watched a guy get up and go to work every day, and he got yelled at a lot, but he cared deeply. And our family vacations were snook fishing or deer hunting or turkey camp, but we didn't leave Florida. Like, it was always in this state. So I learned early on to be in love with the springs, to be in love with cattle ranches and citrus groves and snook fishing and redfish and all that stuff. Like, it just was in me. So, what I noticed was there was a huge uptick in conservation conversations happening at the state level that hunters and anglers were being left out of. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because they were intentionally leaving us out of it, because we weren't kind of asking to be at the table. And for a long time, we led those conversations. And so I wanted to make sure All Florida was not a sportsman's organization, but a conservation organization. We look at all aspects of conservation. If you're familiar with the North American conservation model, that's what the most famous conservation model probably in the history of the world, and it's continental level. There's 5 tools of conservation that they talk about in that. It's the plow, the cow, the axe, the match, and the gun. So that's ranching, agriculture, forestry, fire, and then hunting, fishing, like consumptive use. We consider all of those things. We work on all of those things, and we work at them hard at a state level. Everything from how does the farm bill affect water quality to how does hunting impact the Florida wildlife corridor to, runoff to emergency stuff, Piney Point, the state parks, like stuff like that. We'll get into anything if it touches conservation, and we stay in the singular lane of conservation, but we work, we will sit down and talk with anybody. So that's from lawmakers, legislators, influencers, Joe on the street. If somebody wants to have a conversation, I kind of joke about this, and one day I won't be able to do it, but my cell phone's on my Instagram page. I get called all the time by people that want to ask questions about this type of stuff. And I believe conversation is how we get to a better conservation.
Me too.
If we're willing to sit down and have this.
That's what we're doing here. And that is what is missing in our culture right now. And I don't know where it's gone. I don't know why it's gone away, but people, the tendency is if you disagree with someone, you want to shut them down and not hear from them. And when I grew up, and I know when you grew up, we were always encouraged, if you disagree with someone, you need to understand where they're coming from and have a conversation about it, and maybe even agree to disagree, because it may only be one thing that you're disagreeing about, and you may have a million things that you have in common, right? But I don't know why our culture today is probably social media and many other factors that are dividing us. And that's what's interesting about this particular show that we're doing right now, is this is the first one of this new series that we have called Bernowin's Anglers Unite. And the whole idea is that there are issues and things that threaten fishing and hunting, either the rights or the species or the habitat or something. And if we all are separate and going our own ways and not paying attention to something, whether it's in your home state or across the country in Washington, as anglers, we are a big group. And if we actually, anglers, hunters, fishermen, outdoorsmen, whatever, if you are interested in the water quality and the fishing, together we have a voice. Separate and bickering amongst each other we have no voice, and we will get run over. And that is your business. I'd like to hear about what you, in your experience, different situations. Do you have any that come to mind? Maybe it's the mullet net ban a long time ago that anglers came together and made a difference. Is there anything that comes to mind to you right now?
The FCA, the net ban, but it was the precursor to CCA.
Yes,
was FCA. And funny enough, you can figure out my age from this, but my senior year in high school was when the net ban was passed. And for my senior paper in high school, that's what I wrote it on, because it was such a big deal. The power, like you couldn't open Florida Sportsman and not see everyone in agreement about this conversation. We didn't have social media back then, but you could not, if you went to the tackle shop or you went to the boat ramp, everyone was talking about, we've got to get the net ban passed. We got to get it. It's amazing, like the power of grassroots and the power of community in rallying around a singular cause. And I really do. I think I say a lot of times, sportsmen are our own worst enemies. The reason we will lose stuff is because of sportsmen, because we can't get together on so many things that we should be able to get together on. And that's something that's been really important to me in the short time we've been doing All Florida. But one of the things we did last year was we obviously we got right to fish and hunt passed through the legislature. We got the legislation done. And after that, with a bunch of groups, we threw a celebration at the Capitol where we invited legislators, lawmakers, and non-hunting and fishing organizations to participate in. The Florida Wildlife Corridor, Florida Cattlemen's Association. Like we wanted everyone at the table, because if they get through our gate, they're coming to your gate next. Mm-hmm. Just FYI, if they get through our gate, they're coming to your gate next. Yep. And so whoever they are, but we've got to protect this stuff that keeps Florida wild and keeps Florida special. And there's a million pressures on it, from development to growth to all the negatives that are out there and stuff. There's a bunch of pressure on wild Florida. we've got to stand firm and make sure we've got the tools in place to protect the stuff that makes this thing special.
Yeah.
You pick up a subdivision and stick it in Nebraska, it's pretty much still a subdivision. You're not going to pick up the springs and find them in Nebraska.
Right.
You can't do that. That's not possible. So we've got to be able to protect this stuff that matters to the state.
So a couple of things there. When you said that sportsmen, are our own worst enemy, and it's been difficult to unite sportsmen, what do you think the challenges are there?
Oh man, the cop out challenge there, I think, is social media.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the cop out, and we all like to say, and I'm no different than anybody else because I use social media. I think it's a tool that we have in the world today, but it's also it is what you use it as. If you use a hammer to open a window, you're going to break that window. There are uses for a hammer, and there are uses for Windex. I think the biggest challenge that I see in conservation in general is apathy. It is people believing decisions are made before they get in the room, and therefore not showing up in the room.
Yeah.
And what that means is you have to show up in those rooms, and you're going to take it on the chin. You are going to get punched. But I was an athlete growing up. I played basketball, and my coach never told us. I mean, I played basketball at a big school, a big high school, and we played against some really good teams in the state. And my coach, I remember one time we were playing Kathleen, and my coach said, "Man," or one of the players said, "Man, they're number one ranked in the state. Like we got to keep it close." And my coach chewed him out. "No, we don't. You guys can play with them. You can hang with them. We lost that game, but we lost that game in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
We played them tooth and nail to the finish. We never walked into an arena thinking we're going to lose the game. We showed up day after day after day. And if you do that, what I have seen is if you do that, you'll start to find victories. You'll start to find wins, and you can create momentum. This sounds like silly. Tom, I know you're an athlete. You've been for your whole life. You've been around athletics. There is something to the idea of positive momentum, working hard, showing up every day. You get 1% better a day is what Kobe Bryant says. And I say that every day at my house. You get 1% better today, and you're going to make a difference. And we've got to show up. And I think a lot of times it's easy for us to sit back and look at the changes to the redfish regulations or the changes to the goliath grouper, or they didn't do enough here, they didn't do enough there, or whatever it was. And as a guy that has missed one FWC commission meeting in 8 years, one meeting in 8 years I've missed, I can tell you who's in that room and who's not. And there's a lot of people that don't show up.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. I get people are busy. But we all take days off work to go fishing. We all take days off work to go hunting. We all take days off work. Like, there's some important stuff going on here, and gone are the days when you just throw your $25 over the wall and somebody else will handle it for you. Our voices matter in those rooms, and you got to show up in those rooms. And I'm not saying show up and yell. I'm saying show up, have conversations, get informed, learn the deal.
Yeah, well, that's where I kind of choose my support is exactly on that point. And this is where Captains for Clean Water won my support, because there was a serious problem with the water quality. There were a few groups that were screaming and yelling and pointing fingers, and that is effective and it gets a lot of attention, and people need to do that. That's not my style. And it wasn't Captains for Clean Water style. They said, we're looking for solutions, and we're looking to unite as big a group as possible together through education. And there are solutions and there are ways that we can move forward here positively. Now, the others, that works too. It's just not me. It's just not how I choose to do it. And, when things are going bad, the decision makers need to know it. And if somebody's, so mad that they are pointing their finger and getting in somebody's face and screaming and yelling, that can be effective too. It's just not the way I choose to do it. So anyway, I like solutions, and I also like to understand how big the angling and hunting and fishing community is and what we can do together. There have been some really good success stories, and that brings us to kind of what we're doing today. Florida Amendment 2. Where did this come from? It sounds like I don't know if this is the case or not, but it sounds like you brought this amendment up. Is that correct?
So for a number of years doing conservation advocacy, this has kind of floated around the ether of we need a right to fish and hunt. We're facing this issue. Yep, we're facing issue X, Y, or Z, and you get on the phone with somebody. I could go back and dig for the specifics on this, but you get on the phone with somebody from Safari Club, or you get on the phone with somebody from Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation or ASA or whoever, and the question comes up, do you guys have a constitutional right to fish and hunt in Florida? No, we have statutory protections. Oh, dang it. We can't leverage that then.
Can you tell us what the difference is before we move on between statutory and constitutional right?
Absolutely. And this is the most important question you're going to ask me, because this is the only thing that really changes from what we're talking about with Amendment 2 is a statute can be amended or revoked by the legislature at any time.
Okay. So a change in leadership comes in and it could be out immediately.
Yep, that's exactly right. A statute could be changed, amended, or revoked by the legislature at any time. Do I think that's going to happen next year? Absolutely, I do not. I think our leadership and bipartisan. I think our leadership in our state is behind hunting and fishing. And we'll get to that in a minute.
That's such an important thing about. Well, is it going to happen next year? No, but it's so important when you start talking about constitutional things and you start talking about changing things. You don't know what's coming. You don't know who's going to be in power in 20 years, in 30 years. We have no idea, and that's why it's so important to put real thought towards these things and to think about, okay, well, it's one thing if I can get my way on this one, but what if this was reversed and this thing was coming back at me? I mean, could it be? Like, I think a lot of people don't necessarily think that way, and I think it's a really, really important way to, or something to consider of what are the unexpected outcomes of this that could be so outrageous. I mean, who would have thought we would be where we are today 50 years ago? Nobody could predict it, right? So you don't know who's going to be in power. You don't know what the power is going to be. You don't know what the agenda is. You don't know what any of these things are. So I think it's super important to be thinking about that, like that.
50 years from now, I think in conservation, and again, I'm a guy that works on a lot of conservation on a lot of topics, but I think in conservation, we far too often react and do not think strategically. We put the fire out in front of us, which is a necessary thing, right? Something happens with the state parks, we've got to all get on it because nobody saw that coming. Even lawmakers were saying, we didn't see that coming.
You're referring to the golf courses?
Yeah, you have to react to that immediately because it's a situation that came out of left field, and you got to go put the fire out. Your house is on fire, you put it out.
Yes.
At the same time, we should be strategically looking at conservation measures that protect the things we care about, so we're not constantly having to chase our tail and fight against anti-fishing movements, anti-hunting movements, anti-conservation movements. This is that. Right. I like in the analogy, I ask a lot of people, do you have a lock on your front door? And everybody says yes. And I was like, has anybody ever walked through it? No. But you lock it every night. Like no one has tried to walk through your front door. I mean, every isolated case, but it's very, very small that happening. Why do you lock your front door at night if nobody's trying to walk through it? Well, to protect the stuff I care about. That's exactly what we're doing. It's that simple. We're trying to lock this up, put it into a constitutional right. It's been done in 23 other states.
Okay.
This is not new.
That was one of my questions of the 23 other states. And, that's super important. So in 23 other states, the people that live there have a constitutional right to hunt and fish. So if you change it from a statutory right to hunt and fish to a constitutional right to hunt and fish, what my understanding is from what you just said is that will never change unless there's a massive amendment that would change it, right? And so
that's right.
When that happens, what some of the things that I've heard already, and I've already seen that you have addressed these in your social media, and I'd like to talk about these things because today we often see things name the act that comes through, name the idea, the initiative, the law that goes in, and a lot of times there are things it's disguised as something else. It's disguised as something that is a real green thing, but you really, if you really look into it, maybe there's something that is almost exactly the opposite. So that's a technique that is being used to disguise it by the name of the amendment or whatever, and they even make it difficult to, are you supposed to vote yes on this or are you supposed to vote no on this, and what does that even mean? Like, you really need to know these things before you go in. So some people have expressed concern that this is not what it looks like. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to have you on here to help us to understand. Is this something that you want to vote for? I'm not telling you to vote for it or not to vote for it. This show is about what it is, and then you make your own decision. Okay? So some of the things that I've seen, and you have addressed very well, you've addressed a lot of these things on your social media. People said, well, this isn't real. This isn't just about your constitutional rights to fish. This is something disguised as that, and it's really foreign interests trying to get in and be able to fish in areas that they can't currently fish in. I'm sure you've heard that. So what's your response to that one?
After I get done laughing at that, and I don't mean to demean anyone that says that, but I'll like the absurdity of that. Let me take you through something. We live in the state of Florida, and our colleges and universities can't have TikTok on their campus where they watch it because the Chinese Communist Party uses TikTok. Like, so I'm not saying that's true, but I'm saying that is the policy of the state of Florida. So what you're telling me is we convinced 154 lawmakers to vote to put this thing on the ballot so we could let China come in and commercially fish in our waters. And by the way, they didn't give any money to do that or anything else. That doesn't pass the smell test, reasonableness test, or anything else. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. Now, if you want the legal answer, this is a public right. This is about recreational fishing and hunting. This doesn't apply to commercial interests at all. But that is completely made up. And the fact that that even exists kind of out there in the water supply, so to speak, I think is a testament to why this thing matters. Because the people that are against this are already in Florida. Are there enough of them to beat it? I don't think so, but there's enough of them to create some confusion. And if you lose this, I got news for you. They're coming full bore for Florida.
Right. So who would be, if there are people that are against this, who would be against it and why? What would they gain by not having this as a constitutional right?
Nobody gains anything by not having this as a constitutional right. State of North Carolina, there's case law in North Carolina where CCA North Carolina actually sued the state because you can't sue an entity. So you couldn't sue, like, their gill netting is still legal in North Carolina. I think still to this day, gill netting is legal in North Carolina. They're trying to remove it, but it's still legal in places. The anglers in North Carolina determined that gill nets were taking too many fish out of the water and it was impacting the fishery. So they tried to sue the state. They couldn't sue the gill netters because of public right. You can't sue another entity. You could sue the state. So they took case to the state and said, we want to sue because we can't exercise our right here. The case is still ongoing, but the judge gave standing to the anglers, to CCA North Carolina, based on the language in this amendment, the exact language that we have, which was they determined that the right can't exist in the abstract. So they said you have to be able to exercise the right to fish and hunt. This is impacting it in a way to where you can't. We're going to give this case standing to where there is merit for it to move forward to determine, is the commercial fishing interest overfishing and impacting the recreational fishermen?
Wow, that's interesting. So in that situation, having that there protected the rights to hunt and fish, like the rights to go trout fishing in a North Carolina mountain stream that has nothing to do with this gill netting. Those are the things that I think are really, really important to think about. Is like the gill nets may not be important to someone for whatever reason. They may never go to the coast for any reason, but they're interested in fly fishing in a North Carolina mountain stream for a brook trout. It's the same right. And that person that has a fishing rod in their hand in the North Carolina mountains has the same voice as someone that is being directly impacted by that or a gill net or something else, water quality, anything like that. But together, their voices are twice as strong or even more than that, exponentially stronger. So that's interesting. But are there certain groups that, you don't have to name them, or you could if you want to, but are there certain groups that have an agenda to stop this?
Yeah, and I'll tell you that. So people say, where are these attacks coming from on hunting and fishing? Because we haven't seen them in Florida. And again, I go back to my lock analogy, why that matters. But where we have seen them is, and I talk about this one a lot, but the most recent example that is good to use is Oregon.
Okay.
In Oregon, they came within 20,000 signatures of getting on the ballot a bill that would criminalize hunting, fishing, ranching, animal husbandry, dog training, anything that was deemed to be able to be harmful to an animal.
And this is all coming from animal rights activists, or
it's coming from animal rights activists. And the group that was behind that is supporting the No to Two movement in Florida that is working against this. So
what's the name of that group? Can you say the name of that group?
The name of that group is Wildlife for All.
Okay, so Wildlife for All. That sounds like oh yeah.
Oh, sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah. They chose the name. Florida. Yeah, they chose the name on purpose. But I mean, that's what I'm saying is, like, as we're getting into this conversation of, like, understand what this is before you vote on it, because this one may be in favor of anglers and fishing, but not all of them are. And it's really, really important to understand what it is that you're getting involved in and voting for. So that's one of the foreign interests.
Tom.
Yeah.
Before you go ahead on that, I do want to point something out that I think is interesting in what you said. The ballot language for Amendment 2 and the amendment language are the same language.
Okay. So explain that. What do you mean?
Sentences. I'll read this really quick because it's really quick. The ballot language says, Constitutional Amendment, Article, Section, Right to Fish and Hunt, proposing an amendment to the state constitution to preserve forever fishing and hunting, including by the use of traditional methods, as a public right and preferred means of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife. Specifies that the amendment does not limit the authority granted to FWC under their section of the Constitution. That's the ballot language. The amendment language says the exact same thing. It just doesn't say proposing an amendment to. It says Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 28. Mm-hmm. That's it.
So there's no trick. When someone goes to the ballot and they read that on there and it says, do you vote yes or no? If you're in support of this, you would vote yes.
Vote yes.
Okay. And if you're opposed to this, you would vote no. Right? Because sometimes those things are super tricky, man. I'm telling you, like things about your neighborhood or other things, and you're like, do you support this? And there's this sentence, and it's like, man, is that a trick question? Like, it's really hard sometimes to understand which you're voting for, and I'm sure it's not an accident.
And used to, this is not legal anymore to my knowledge, but used to, you could take two disconnected ideas, and I don't remember what it was, like offshore oil drilling and dog racing. And you write a 3-page amendment and you reduce it to 150 words or whatever the ballot language is. And I have no idea what this means. This amendment is the same behind it as what's in front of it. It's exactly the same. And there was a discussion because you have to submit what the ballot language will be. Mm-hmm. And people are like, should we shorten it? I'm like, no, it should say the same thing because there should be nothing dishonest or misleading. Not that would have been dishonest, but we have the opportunity to make these things identical.
Right.
Make them identical.
And so when they're identical, that would be like, I don't know, some of these bills or amendments, they might be 150 pages thick that no one, including a lot of the lawmakers, they're not going to read. Maybe their paralegals or their staff reads it, but I'm pretty sure that they're too busy to read some of that stuff. So having it be very simple is very straightforward. So, Jake, why don't you pull up the things that he had on his social media, and let's just run through those because you did a really good job of bringing. I mean, I'm sure it's because people are asking, right?
This is the private property rights one.
Okay.
So there's a lie out there that here's where this originated, Tom. Is there's a myth out there that by passing Amendment 2, it will obliviate private property rights, and the reason that that's out there is the language that is used in Amendment 2, traditional methods, preferred means of managing wildlife responsibly, that stuff has been proven and used in other states, including North Carolina, where I told you they've successfully used it to get standing. So those are terms that you want to make sure are in your constitutional right to fish and hunt. Other states have a provision in their amendment about trespassing rights. Our initial draft had a provision about trespassing rights. And bill drafting in the state of Florida came back and said that's surplusage. That's the word they used. That is unnecessary language in this because in Article 1, Section 2 of the Florida Constitution, your private property rights are already protected. So there's nothing here that undoes that. They exist already. And the example that was given to me by the attorney was, you have the right to free speech. I have private property rights. You can't exercise your right to free speech on my private property rights. They don't trounce each other just because we expressly didn't call out that they don't trounce each other. They don't trounce each other because they don't. They stand in harmony, not in opposition or contradiction to each other.
Interesting. So while we're on the subject, just to be clear for people that may not know, and there's a lot of people that listen from other states besides Florida too, and each state, if you're a trout fisherman, you know this pretty well, each state has different water rights, so or trespassing rights. So, for example, in Wyoming, the people own the stream bottom. You can't touch the stream bottom. So they don't own the water flowing through their land. So you could actually float through their land if you start on a public access. You can float through the land. You cannot put your anchor, even your oar can't touch the ground, and you certainly can't get out. Okay, that's one. In Montana, it's high water law. So if, let's say, we're getting to a great time of the year to fish out there, you go to Montana, the rivers are very low, you can go to a public access, a bridge, anywhere, and you can enter the river there. You can walk right through, as long as you stay under the high water law, high water mark, which this time of the year is 100 yards over there and way up on the bank. You can walk right through Ted Turner's property on the finest trout stream in the whole world. That's your law, and they may not like it, but that's the law. So let's go over just how Florida works and what
Florida has a similar SSL, and this doesn't impact that in any way, shape, or form. But Florida has similar SSL, submerged sovereign land or submerged sovereign land rules in the state. So essentially, we're similar to what you described in Montana, in that if it's public and your feet are wet, your feet would have been wet at some point this year, you're pretty legal. And we see that often on like the Kissimmee system, the Kissimmee River system, where people will fish, sure, but in Florida you see it more applied to hunting. You can hunt to the high water mark on a lot of properties. And so guys will take their boat and they'll go hunt hogs or they'll go hunt deer or stuff like that. But yeah, we have similar water laws in the state of Florida. You can own the water bottom, but I can stand on the water bottom in Florida if it's SSL. See,
that's a different
land.
Yeah, that's a different. I mean, and each one has a slightly different. But being able to stand in the water. So if there's a beach that they claim is private, and you walk down the water line and you're in the water, you can walk right down that private beach, right? Or a lot of people that listen to this, fish canals. And if you go into a canal system, there's some great tarpon snook fishing in these canals. You go in there, and some of the property owners get upset because they think that they own that seawall or whatever. But if you're in the water in a boat, you're perfectly legal. And in fact, you have the right to fish there, right?
Navigable water is different from all water. And I didn't prep for this, so I'm talking off the top of my head here, but I'm pretty sure if a canal, let's say you built a subdivision and you dug canals into that subdivision, I believe there is a way you could limit fishing or hunting. Not that you'd hunt in a canal full of houses, but I believe there is a way you could limit that. I'm not sure that process, because that is actually subject to statute, that is statutorily managed. I know that I've seen restricted hunting areas, so I can speak from that. I've seen restricted hunting areas granted or created in man-made canals that are not considered navigable water to limit. So somebody goes in and digs canals in a system, houses aren't built yet, guys would go in there and duck hunt. I've seen restricted hunting areas created in that type of situation before.
Okay.
So the state, and again, any right, SSL is a little bit different, but any right is always subject to time, manner, and place. So just because you have the right to free speech as a citizen of the United States of America doesn't mean you can walk into Walmart tomorrow and yell fire. Mm-hmm. Like you have time, manner, and place for where you can exercise your right to free speech. There's still regulations that apply even to SSL. There's some places on the Peace River where the high water line does not apply. specifically wouldn't want to quote those here, but there's some places on there where the high water line, because people were abusing it and camping and leaving trash and stuff, and the state came in and said, no, we're taking this and restricting it back. So it got a little contentious there. But I said a minute ago, sportsmen are our own worst enemies sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that could be an issue. So wherever you're fishing, whether it's in Florida or any other state, the best advice is to know the law, and to, if you're confused about the law for the exact area that you're fishing, consult a game warden and ask them before you go and do those things, because it's better to ask and understand what it is and be granted. He says, yeah, you can do it, man. They're going to be mad at you, but you can do it. I can't do anything about it. Okay, well then that's a decision that you need to make. Do I really want to make waves here? Or, like, that you can duck hunt in certain places, but you have to shoot straight up. I don't know. Is that really something you want to do? You're basically in a neighborhood. Like, I don't know. But if you're questioning whether it's legal or not, ask the game warden. They'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. Okay, so let's go to the next one. What was that one saying?
This one, we kind of talked about a minute ago, but we already have the right to fish and hunt. And I talked about this earlier. We have a statute. It's 379.104. If anybody wants to go look up the statute, that was passed by the legislature because we did not have a constitutional right. But again, this could be changed at any time. And if you look at the how do we know down there, and I can't read that, it's small for me, but I'll tell you what's in our how do we knows, we cited constitutional or case law. We did not cite op-eds or opinion pieces or anything else. There you go. So absent a constitutional limitation, the legislature's discretion reasonably exercised. This is a sole break on the enactment of legislation. What that means is, in plain speak, the legislature acting in the best interest of the people is what we're depending on today. So essentially, do you want to trust government with this long term? Or do you want to ensure that you've got a stick to use if it becomes a point where the government doesn't have the citizens' best interest? That's what we're talking about doing, is do you trust the government, or do you want this as a right long term? And I want to be careful there. I have a lot of friends that are civil servants, public servants, elected officials that I do trust, but they're not going to be in office forever. Yeah. And they're one voice in office, each of them individually. I want this as a right so that if my government loses its mind, I've got some manner of recourse to protect myself on this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. So that's the decision that you're making. That's a great explanation of the decision that we're making here.
Parks.
So this is one that's particularly relevant right now because of the golf course thing that just happened in the state parks. Like they tell people that aren't from Florida what happened in the state parks recently.
Yeah, if you aren't from Florida, there was a plan leaked out by Florida's DEP. It was leaked to a reporter to where they were going to go into some state parks and build pickleball courts and swimming pools and hotels, golf courses. And the one that got the most run was the golf courses at Jonathan Dickinson and the hotels at Anastasia, or the hotel at Anastasia. Because honestly, I went through all the plans, and there was one where there was a pickleball court in a parking lot that was already paved. Mm-hmm. I didn't care about that. Right. But the rest of them, like, this is not the place. We go to Florida's state parks to get away. Like, I don't know how much time you've spent in state parks, but in my life, I've spent a lot of time there. Yeah. They're beautiful. It's a place you can go connect with nature. It's a great place to take kids to connect with nature. I like that you can't hunt or fish there because it's low key, low stress. It's easy. So this is protected already by administrative code. The argument I would make to that, if I was arguing this, would be, yeah, but we're passing a constitutional right. Won't that trample on the administrative code? Like, wouldn't a right supersede administrative code? We're moving it from a statute to a right. Wouldn't that supersede an administrative code? And I think in theory it would, except for there's something here in the administrative code that hunting, trapping, and pursuit of wildlife is prohibited on all state park property. However, there are some reserves, meaning property in state parks that is maybe not accessible or whatever, where FWC is the authority that does manage hunting on those properties. Where that goes is FWC in the amendment language is granted the authority to continue managing fish and wildlife and game laws. So FWC, if we turned Ocala, the joke I make is if we turned Ocala National Park into a state park, we bought it from the feds and we turned it into a state park. A lot of people hunt there. If FWC deemed it was important to continue hunting there, they would. But they would also close off sections of it to hunting, no different than they do on any other property. There's nothing in this amendment, though, that triggers tomorrow somebody can go sue the state of Florida and say, hey, I want to go hunt in Jonathan Dickinson State Park, or I want to go hunt in Homosassa Springs State Park. That's not there. It doesn't exist because FWC still has the authority to administer who can or cannot hunt on state lands.
That's interesting.
You can't do
so
it.
There are state parks that you can hunt in or fish in.
They're called reserves. They sit in the park system,
Right. Yeah,
but they're
in the
not.
system.
I don't know of a state park you can hunt in.
Yeah,
and
I don't
I'm not
either.
interested in that fight, honestly.
And I was
don't
wondering
think
if there was a national park that you could hunt in. Is there a national park that you can hunt in?
I'm not aware of a national park, although I will say
Because you can
when
fish in
pythons
national parks.
You can, and when pythons became a problem, the district started hiring python contractors to go in to remove. We call them python hunters. They're going in there to remove pythons.
So that's a form of hunting, and you have to. I think that you have to have a license to do that.
You have to be permitted by the district, so you have to be like a contractor through the district.
That's a form of hunting for non-native species. That may be the only one. I don't know. Maybe something in Alaska. Those giant parks up there. I don't know.
I'm a Florida boy, so I'm not aware of. I know you can't hunt in Everglades National Park, and I don't know anybody that wants to hunt in Everglades National Park. Like it's not a.
Oh, there are people that want to.
There probably is, but this is not a hill that. This is not a hill to where this opens a door to that conversation. It just doesn't.
And that's not what we're talking about here. Like it's not about like the right to hunt and fish is not about like, oh, it's going to be a lot of new lands that are going to be opened. And we'll just be able to hunt and fish anywhere we want to. I don't think that I would even be in favor of that. I think there should be places where you don't do that. All right, let's go to the next one.
Oh, this is a good one. Amendment 2 will be used to bring back the bear hunt.
Okay.
So the reason we know that that's not true is sentence 2 of the amendment. FWC has the authority. If a bear hunt is ever going to be granted in Florida or managed in Florida or anything else, and I'm going to be clear, I'm not a big game hunter. I'm a bird hunter primarily and a fisherman. But if we determine that there's enough bears to sustain a bear hunt in Florida, guess who's going to make that determination? Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. And this amendment has no bearing on whether or not they make that determination. The thing that's going to have the bearing on whether or not they make that determination is science. That's what's going to drive whether or not there's a bear hunt. It's
and also public opinion, just like the Goliath grouper regulations. That one of the things that I found that I learned the most about having this podcast is some of the science-based different things when I've interviewed different either fish and wildlife people or scientists that give their data to Florida Fish and Wildlife or any other commission. And in the Goliath grouper one was interesting because it's really amazing that opened at all, because we didn't have any catch data for a long time. It's been closed for a long time. So they reopened that, gave 200 permits for a certain size fish based upon what? Based upon anglers telling them that there are so many of these fish that you should go check it out. They go out there, send their people out there. But basically, that was one that public opinion was very, very important to get it open. Now, there's plenty of situations where public opinion has kept something closed. Grizzly bear hunting out west. Wolves. The people, even if an area has a lot of wolves, they're very resistant to hunting the wolves. And whatever. It's a hot button situation and something that a lot of people have an opinion on. I'm not saying one way or another, which is right or wrong. Just saying that there's more to it than just scientific data sometimes, and the public opinion is very, very important. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that this is going to be on the ballot, but you still actually have to show up and vote for it, right? Like that's public opinion, and you still have to go to these meetings sometimes, or someone does, or you do, or a representative for the cause has to go. So public opinion is also very, very important, either whether you're for it or against it.
Well, and I'll tell you the other consideration there, and this is something most people don't know about FWC, and they're going to kill me when I say this because I yell at them about this in private all the time. But FWC is probably the leading agency in the state for what you're talking about, which is social science. Social science is acceptance of policy. So make this up. There's socially no one against hunting squirrels. Like maybe like some fraction of a % of the state is against hunting squirrels. But if there was a big movement against hunting squirrels, FWC would put together polling surveys. They'd have focus groups. They'd have meetings. They'd have listening sessions. They would build out a social science kind of matrix. I don't know the right term for this. Social science is still science. I like to say science is biological science, but social science is a form of science. And FWC probably is the leading social science agency in the country. And that's why I believe FWC will one day turn on a bear hunt again. But I think what you will see is that bear hunt will be isolated in parts of the state to where they're more rural, more like, and they'll use a different method of managing the wildlife in more urban areas because that's the right scientific thing, but it's based on biological science and social science as the driving factors in this. And like I said, they're going to yell at me because I said that because they make fun of me all the time about social science. But it's true. They really are. They're the leading. They have an incredible social sciences team, and they're very forward thinking on that stuff.
Yeah, interesting. So let's get back to the bear hunt. If that there's no way that this amendment 2 could bring back the bear hunt just because we have a right to hunt and fish, is what you're saying.
We had a bear hunt in 2015. Guess what? We didn't have a right to hunt and fish in 2015. Like FWC can turn that on or off when they want to. Like this has no bearing on it.
It also seems like, you know, when you see this one and the next one that's probably coming up here about these traditional methods. Let's talk about that traditional method one, because it seems like when you talk about the bear hunt and the traditional method, that's a pretty clear indication of where that's coming from the animal rights activists, and that's fine. That's their opinion. They're entitled to it. But the traditional methods. So somehow, let's discuss this. So traditional methods means that which is legal at the time of passage. Okay, that's what it means. This is one of the phrases that you include if you have a right to fish and hunt, because that's the templated language. Traditional methods and preferred means are the two kind of phrases that you want to have out there. It does not mean we're suddenly able to harpoon manatees or hunt panthers or use a punt gun to go shoot wood storks in the Everglades. Like, it does not remove management authority from FWC. And people are freaking out because the word traditional to them means, oh, well, we're going back to, 1872. That's not at all what it means. And you know that's not, even if nothing else I said was true, FWC still has governance of the administration of wildlife take. That's clearly defined. So you can't reset. They're not going to suddenly let you hunt at night. Time, what did I say? Time, place, and manner exist in all rights. So FWC still has the complete authority to administer when these rights are able to exercise. If traditional methods was such a big deal, we would no longer have to buy fishing and hunting licenses based off what they're saying. We'd no longer have to, no one believes that to be true, yet they're hanging up on this word because they think, oh, this is going to open bear hunting or this is going to open steel jaw traps or anything else. All of that is administered. So I have Florida Admin Code 68A. I didn't cite specific ones because there's just too many out there. But the things I just said, hunting at night, when you can and can't take migratory birds, when you can and can't take deer, when you can and can't take whatever, all of that's covered under that administrative code and administered by FWC. So in other words, what you're saying is like traditional methods would include hunting at night. Like a long time ago, that's a great time to hunt. You're trying to survive. You don't care if the sun just went down and it's past shooting time, what today conventionally is shooting time. If there's an animal there that you need, that would be the best time of day to hunt. So that is typically a traditional method, but the FWC deems that Nope. We have shooting time of sunrise to sunset. You can't shoot after sunset, or you can't shoot before sunrise. If you do, you're in violation and you're going to get in trouble. So despite that being a traditional method of hunting in the dark, it's not legal. And it won't, and this isn't going to change anything, right?
This can't change it. It's not going to change it. It won't change it. It can't change it because FWC is not going to press reset on all regulation. Traditionally, or historically is probably the better word. Historically, you didn't worry about seasons for when you shot a deer. When you needed a deer to eat, you went out and you shot the deer.
Exactly.
Like you were hungry. You didn't care if it was legal or not to shoot that thing. That is not what traditional methods means. Traditional methods means that what hasn't been changed in a long time, or what's legal at the time of passage. That's how it is defined in these other states that have already used this language and templated it out. So I get why people hang up on that. I do understand their concern there, but there's not a real concern behind it. The language was chosen intentionally because it protects what's legal today. Right. And it doesn't preclude FWC. Today, you can hunt with a crossbow in some circumstances, right? Like you can think you have a shoulder injury. My dad, a few years back, switched to a crossbow because he couldn't pull back a compound, and he got a special permit. If FWC decided, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore, it's legal today, they still have the authority to remove it. And I don't believe there would be grounds to challenge that.
Right.
I don't. Like, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't believe there'd be grounds to challenge it.
Right.
So.
Okay, so the traditional methods is something. Now, what about traditional methods as far as, like somebody could be concerned, like, okay, well, traditional methods is netting. We've already gotten rid of the mullet netting. We definitely don't want that to come back. Is there anything in this that could be some sort of a loophole that could allow for that?
So a lot of people have asked us about the net ban, and this is, I get the concern because this was a concern we brought up from day one in discussing this, is we do not want to do anything that jeopardizes the net ban. That was brought abundantly clear. So I've got some case law there. I'm not a lawyer, so you can read that if you want to, but the way it has been conveyed to me by every constitutional attorney I've spoken to in Tallahassee, and I've spoken to several, is you read the Constitution as a whole. So you don't, similar to we talked about the private property rights, not undoing your right to free speech doesn't undo. Similarly, they stand in harmony. So if this was to undo the net ban, the word traditional is not what undoes the net ban. Beyond the fact that traditional means that which is legal at the time of passage today, and net bans are illegal today, it does not reset regulations that are already in place. And it doesn't undo this because you already have an amendment that protects the net ban. And traditional methods doesn't undo that amendment. To undo that amendment, you would have to say, as another sentence, this also undoes Amendment 35, the Florida net ban, allowing for gill nets to be reestablished.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you just said there, and I don't think you meant to say this, but you said net bans are illegal. Did you mean nets are illegal?
Gill nets are illegal. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, gill nets are illegal. The net ban is in place, making gill netting illegal in the state of Florida.
Right. Okay, cool. So, and then the one thing that that we also haven't talked about yet, well, we'll just touch on it a little bit. One of the things that's in this on your social media is that there aren't any threats to hunting and fishing.
Yes, we touched on this a little bit with the group from Oregon. Wildlife for All, you asked if I could name them a minute ago. And so there's some of their platforms that you can find on their website if you go dig around. Wildlife commissions would be abolished. So the thing that we have ensured is protected in this, which is central. You could love FWC, hate FWC, and I fight with them more than anybody you know, and I respect the heck out of them. They are critically important to the way we do conservation in the state, critically important, because even though they're political appointees, they are isolated. They are not beholden to the legislature for anything but budget. They are able to set and govern wildlife laws in this isolated, almost like a fourth branch of government. I call it the conservation branch of government. Florida is brilliantly set up that way. And so we have these people sitting over there, and they can be appointed. Like I said, they can kind of come and go and change. Wildlife for All believes we should do away with them entirely. So it's no wonder that there are groups out there that would want to abolish this. What happens when you do away with them entirely? Now we do have a traditional methods problem because who's governing and who's putting the laws into place and everything else, which is the absurdity of the traditional methods argument, because the people that are against this actually want chaos so that they can outlaw fishing and hunting. Like that's the be all in game for them, is they want to end what they deem animal cruelty, which is all manner of the stuff that we fish and hunt.
Yeah. One more question about that. When we started this kind of Anglers Unite thing, one of Bernowin, the company that is helping us with this, is in on the West Coast, in the Northwest, and a lot of their concerns are around the salmon and how the salmon migrate and return to the streams, and then it's very, very, very important. So dams are an issue. There's lots of issues that can mess up the salmon spawn. One of the things that we are going to talk about in future episodes is this issue with native rights. So traditional methods in that area of the world, gill netting and fishing in ways that are very effective, and I don't know enough about this issue yet to really speak on it, but I know that it is a real issue up there, that the traditional methods are being used in a way that it's not just to feed the families. I think it's like they're doing that and then they're selling those fish, and they have all the right to do it, but it's impacting the fishery big time. And they're doing it at different times of the year. I don't know. Well, I'm anxious to get into that issue, but I just wondered in Florida if that is something that is of any concern, or if you know of any native rights from Native Americans that have certain fishing rights that preserving traditional methods would open some sort of a situation like that.
No, the most of the Seminole Miccosukee folks are supportive of this. Those are the two big tribes in Florida, and they're supportive of it. Subsistence rights exist. I haven't looked at those in a minute, but subsistence rights do exist in Florida tribally for them to be able to. Don't hold me to this, but they can shoot deer or whatever for tribal ceremonies or whatever. They're allowed to kind of do some things that are maybe not regular, but this does not open them up from a commercial entity side to suddenly be able to go,
well, we're going to net
bass and sell them commercially,
right?
On the market. This doesn't open that door.
Okay.
That's not a concern.
Yeah. Well, it is, it is something that I'm interested in learning more about, because those are things that if you live in Florida, you don't think about those things, but it is important to think about the repercussions of any decision that you make, because what does that mean? Right. What does it mean way down the road, like what we were talking about? And so that's the reason why I ask. So where do you see, when do people vote on this?
So that's coming up soon. I don't know when this airs, but that's coming up soon. November 5th is election day. So this will be on the ballot, and in Florida on the ballot, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. I think we've got 6 amendments on the ballot. I think we've got a president on the ballot. I think we got a senator on the ballot. Obviously, I'd also tell your listeners that are in Florida, to me, the most important thing you can vote on besides this is your local state officials, like your state reps, your state senators, your county commissioners. When I deal with Florida stuff, those are the people that have a lot of influence over my daily life. And I'm not marginalizing the senatorial, presidential elections, all that other stuff. Vote, be informed. But we have that information way more available to us. A lot of people show up on the day of, and they don't know who their state rep candidates are. Yeah. They don't know who their county commission candidates are. Man, spend a few minutes and learn something about those people before you go in, so at least you're familiar with their positions.
Well, in that situation, a lot of people don't even know where to begin. Where do they go look? If you were to say, you're advising a group of young voters that have never voted before, where would you tell them to go? How do you learn those things?
That's a great question. I would tell you to go to your local supervisor of elections. First off, make sure you're registered to vote.
Mm-hmm.
First off, and if you're registered to vote, I think the last day to register this year is October 7th in Florida. Make sure you're registered by then, and then make sure you can early vote. I think that opens October 20th in Florida. So they have polling stations where you can go vote, and the election day itself is November 5th. But the other thing you can do is you can go find a sample ballot for where you're at your local supervisor of elections. You can see who's on the ballot. And I would advise people, now you're going to have to take this with a grain of salt, but I would advise people, you're going to have two candidates for your state rep. You're going to have two candidates for your state senator. You're going to have two candidates for your county commission seats or whatever. Google them and read about them. It's going to take you, if you had 12 races, it's going to take you an hour and a half. That's an hour and a half of time. I talked about apathy being the biggest challenge to sportsmen. Apathy is also the biggest challenge to conservation in Florida, because we sit back and we get caught up in sexier issues and we don't pay attention to the people that are going to affect the things that matter the most to us. You think you're growing too fast, you got water quality concerns, you got this, that, and the other, and we want to yell at DEP, or we want to yell at the governor, or we want to yell at whoever. A simple fact is the people permitting the houses being built, or the people permitting water usage or anything else, live in your county, and none of us know who those people are because we didn't pay attention to them when it was this time of year. If you're pissed about that other stuff, take an hour and a half, you scroll on your phone at night, put TikTok down or Instagram down, and go get that ballot and figure out who those names are locally and read about them and figure out, like, what are the things you'll see. We get political mailers in the primary season. You'll see political mailers for local candidates say they're going to, stop immigration or protect the economy or whatever. And it's like, dude, you're going to be a junior state rep from Polk County. Like, you ain't doing none of that stuff. And even if you were the senior, you can't do much of that stuff. Stop giving me sexy political pandering terms and give me some information so that I can learn about what are you going to do about road infrastructure? What are you going to do about water infrastructure? What are you going to do about education? What are you going to do about conservation, environmental lands, growth, development? What are you doing about the stuff that's affecting my day-to-day life? Because, Tom, I don't know where you're at, but I have to use a GPS to drive around now because there's road construction going on everywhere, and I don't know how to get anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
So I got a little far afield there, but that's the best advice I have is go do some research on your local candidates.
Yeah, and it's not as easy as, especially when it comes to the local candidates, it's certainly not as easy as voting one party or the other, because people, and so your advice on that is, you're way more educated on the just what's going on and who represents what than most of the people listening to this. So if you're a Democrat, you might be for something. If you're a Republican, you might be for something else. But under their nose, where they're living, one may be for clean water and one may be for development. And it might surprise you which one is which. I don't know.
Or you may find somebody for, I don't want to demonize development either, because that's an easy punching bag. You may find somebody that's a developer that's trying to do it in a good way and be cognizant of the environment. And somebody else is like, no, we want to build out, as many tract homes as we can because we need more housing. There is no recipe to this. People are people.
Yeah.
And I said earlier I don't know if I said this on this podcast, but Amendment 2 passed the House and Senate 154-1. Overwhelmingly bipartisan vote. We had Republican sponsors and we had Democrat sponsors.
154-1. Who's
Tell
the
me
one?
Something else. That was Senator Lauren Book, who I actually like. She's a Democrat senator from the Palm Beach area, and she voted as a protest vote that something else wasn't getting an amendment on the ballot. I think it was marijuana or abortion or something. She voted. It had nothing to do with the right to fish and hunt. It had to do with she wanted something else on the ballot, and that was one of her issues. Okay, like, don't use me for that, but also I really wanted the unanimous. But I'm really proud because when I go to Lauren Mello is the first person I spoke to. She's the state rep from Naples, and Lauren Mello is who sponsored the legislation and wrote the legislation with me and everything. Like, she was the champion for this. Lindsey Cross in St. Pete is a Democrat. And when I called Lindsey about this, she's like, I'm all about it, Travis. Like, what do we got to do to make this happen? I said earlier, conservation is not partisan. Fishing and hunting should not be partisan. I think we get in our own little circle sometimes And we believe it to be partisan because all of us identify a certain way. But the simple fact is, if we're going to survive as a state with our natural resources, conservation cannot be a partisan issue. It doesn't mean there's not different ways to get to the conclusion, and you can decide what you think is best on those ways. But I have friends on both sides of the aisle that have stood up for anglers. I have friends on both sides of the aisle that have stood up for hunters. I have friends on both sides of the aisle that have stood up for water, for land, for all the stuff that matters to keep Florida special. And that's why doing the research matters, because in your local state representative rate, you might be at a place where you're like, man, I'm a hardcore Dem and this Republican makes more sense to me, or the other way. It may be I'm a hardcore Republican, but really locally, this Democrat makes better sense because we're having such water quality problems or infrastructure problems or whatever. And I don't know, like, there's no recipe. You can't just say go one way or go the other.
Right.
You got to go do your research and learn who those people are.
That is, the most important thing that I think somebody, there are a lot of young voters probably listening to this that have never voted before, or people that have just never really paid much of attention to anything other than the big ones, the president, the senator, but especially in Florida, I think that, you have a way that you would like to see, or things that you would like to see. Maybe you want more golf courses and you would vote for that in the state parks. Maybe you think that's a terrible idea. Either way, if you want your vote to be heard, you have to understand who is for what you're for, and then go vote that way. And you have to vote. Like, that's super, super important. That's our right. People have fought and died for that right for a long time. Take it seriously and get out and vote. Most people listening will do that, but be educated on what's important to you. I'm not here to tell you which way to go.
I'm going to hit you with something, Tom. Surprisingly, a huge number of hunters and anglers or fishing and hunting license holders do not show up and vote.
Don't vote at all?
They do not vote at all. I forget the exact number, but it's hundreds of thousands in the state of Florida. Fishing and hunting license holders do not show up and vote at all.
Wow.
Right. And so
wonder why that is.
That's crazy. I go back to the magic word apathy. I think that's a lot of it is, it's easy for us to sit back and say sometimes, man, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. Man, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. It doesn't matter. And I cannot stress to you, I know this sounds magical and pie in the sky and like Ted Lasso or something, but the fact is you've got to have faith in this process, in the system, and you've got to show up and vote year after year, day after day. You got to show up at your meetings. You got to show up and speak up for the stuff you believe in. Because by not doing that, you are a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're making sure it's going to go that way because you're not showing up for it. Like, you want to bend it, show up and bend it.
I guess you could probably say there's hundreds of thousands of hunting and fishing license holders that don't vote, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that don't hold a fishing and hunting license that don't vote. It's probably about the same, honestly. But the thing that drives me insane and crazy is that if you don't vote, don't complain about the outcome. Like, if you go there and you exercise your right to vote for whatever it is that's important to you, and it doesn't go your way, well, then you can keep trying to make it go your way in the future. But if you don't even vote, you have no room to be criticizing the decisions that are being made. You didn't put your voice out there, and your voice is important. It took me a long time to figure that out. I mean, I'm 56 years old now, and I got to say, when I was 21, I didn't think my voice mattered at all. When I was probably 30, I didn't think it really mattered. But at 56, you start to realize, man, it does matter. And, so if you're one that does have the apathy, just don't complain about it when it doesn't go your way.
Decisions get made by people that show up. I believe that at the voting booth. I believe that at the FWC commission meetings. I believe that in Tallahassee, if there's a bill being run that you care about, showing up there, speaking truth to power, not saying yelling. I'm not saying a mob, but I'm showing up, speaking truth to power. The most powerful force on the planet Earth is an informed constituency. Mm-hmm. And we live in a great country that allows that a voice. An informed constituency can move mountains. And
the ability to be informed today is greater than maybe any time that we've been alive. With the internet, you can Google anything, and not that everything that you're going to get on that Google search is fact. That's for sure. You need to be careful about that too. But there are websites that you can go to. I mean, I would think that if you go to a congressman or a senator or a local person's website, what that says on that website is probably accurate. And, or that's an assumption, I guess, that you may not be smart.
I'll take the next step there, Tom. Go read let's assume you live in a district and you've got a House candidate running, you got a Democrat and a Republican. They're both going to have an email address on there or a phone number on there. And a lot of them, that's their cell phone number. Because these are not people making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. A state rep gets 24 grand or something like that, 18 grand. They get nothing. So call that number and ask them the question you want to ask them. Or send an email and ask them the question you want to ask. I mean, be kind, be a human. But there's no problem in asking them, hey, where are you at on this thing? Where are you at on that thing? At the time of recording this, you got 6-7 weeks till the election. Do that today. You ain't have to do your homework. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is get that email address and ask them the question. These are the things I care about. Where are you at on it? Next. Yeah. Be informed when you show up and get your ballot.
Yeah. So in the spirit of this new series that we have of Anglers Unite, how important, obviously we've gone over and over about how important it is, but in a situation like this, if people that want a right to hunt and fish, to be constitutional right that can't be taken away from them, how can that happen? Is it just as simple as everyone that's important to is going to vote, so there is a uniting there, or is there anything else that you should be doing? Should you be trying to convince other people of this issue? Or does that even matter? Or if all the anglers got together and said, we want this, you know how many hunting and fishing license holders there are in the state of Florida, would that be enough?
No.
It would not be enough.
No, and it's a constitutional amendment. So even if one party or the other said, if all the Democrats said, we want this, let's show up and vote for it, that wouldn't be enough. It's going to take a true collaborative effort of people to get this passed. And real quick story on that is, I talk all the time. So I'm the only sportsman from the state of Florida that spoke at the Florida Wildlife Corridor Summit last year. So think about that for a second. The only angler or hunter that spoke on the main stage at the Wildlife Corridor, and I don't know of any that spoke at other stages either, but at the Wildlife Corridor Summit. The Wildlife Corridor is one of the most successful conservation projects in state history. And 19% of the Florida wildlife, if your listeners aren't familiar with it, the Wildlife Corridor is a green infrastructure basically saying a panther could walk from Flamingo to the Okefenokee Swamp and not cross a road or have underpasses to get under them or whatever. Theoretically, it's better for genetic diversity. It's better for all wildlife. It's better for disease, everything. It's an incredibly cool project that Florida has done. So I'm saying it was cool that I got to speak there, but it's also a little bit of let me give you some credibility around the corridor and my connection to it. 19% of the Florida Wildlife Corridor was acquired with sportsman's dollars. Mm-hmm. So if you're a hiker, if you're a mountain biker, if you're a bird watcher, if you like panthers or you like bears or you like gopher tortoises, voting yes on this is protecting the places where those animals exist and the traditions. I call it a tradition, but the conservation practice that allows those animals to survive and thrive in these places. Where I've seen grasshopper sparrows, which is the most endangered bird in the United States, is a grasshopper sparrow. I've seen them in two different places. One is Avon Park Bombing Range, where I was hunting with my father, and once was at Three Lakes Wildlife Management Area. Both of those acquired with sportsman's dollars or using sportsman's dollars to manage their land. The most endangered bird in the world on those properties, thriving. Why? Hunting's not the only answer, but hunting's a huge component of why that's happening. So what we need help with is, I tell people all the time, your Sunday school class, your bank teller, the cashier at Publix, your mom and them, whoever you talk to about this, whether they own a spinning rod or not, when they put their kayak in at the boat ramp, guess who paid for the boat ramp?
That's right.
Anglers, fishing license holders. When they put their jet ski in at the boat ramp, it drive me crazy running up and down the coast during tarpon season. Guess who paid for the boat ramp that guy used? Anglers. And I'm not saying that flippantly. When federal dollars come in, there's a mandate that a certain percentage of those federal dollars are used for building and upkeep on boat ramps by the state wildlife agency that gets those federal dollars.
Sure.
that come directly from us as fishing license holders buying them. So if you want clean water, you want public lands, you want public access to water, hunting and fishing are critical to those things. And if you want wildlife to thrive of all sorts, hunting and fishing are critical to those things. Voting yes on this is, to me, and I say this all the time, voting yes on Amendment 2 is a conservation vote, and it is a vote in favor of conserving Florida's wildlife and natural resources. It's that simple to me.
That's incredibly good advice. And what I would think is the first question, and I just want everyone that is going to present this to their friends, their family, their Sunday school class, their parents, whatever, to have a good answer for it. So I'd like for you to just answer this as a rhetorical question, that if you say, well, 19% of the Florida corridor was funded by anglers and hunters and fishermen, and that boat ramp that you like to use, that's funded by hunters and fishermen, and someone is going to say, how is that? Where does that money come from? What do you say?
So that money is, we all pay. We call it, this is the buzzword, it's a user pays public benefit system that voluntarily hunters and anglers have used for generations, because we recognize that we want to impact this resource, and we're going to have to pay to make sure this resource is there for us to impact. And we've done this since the 30s on the hunting side. We've done it since the 50s on the fishing side. And so every spinning reel you buy, every shotgun you buy, every tackle box you buy, every trolling motor you buy, there's an excise tax paid at the manufacturer. It's passed on to us as the consumer, but you don't see it at the cash register. It's built into the price, but it's paid at the manufacturer, that goes to DC, and it goes into a special fund, the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Fund. And then those dollars come back to the state in allocated programs. On the hunting side, there's some that go to administration of land programs. There's some that go to youth programs. On the fishing side, there's one for artificial reefs. There is one for boat ramps. There is one for the trophy catch program on the bass side. If anybody's bass anglers, part of that is funded through fishing license dollars that go, and the trophy catch is a citizen science project where they track bass over, I think, 8 pounds that are caught, and they send you a t-shirt or a sticker or something. And then they have data from citizen source where they can tell where bass populations are doing this, or where we're seeing big bass or anything else. It's an incredibly important thing where we are paying for conservation dollars. We are contributing those conservation dollars when we go buy stuff. Mm-hmm. And it is coming back, and it is benefiting way more than us. It is benefiting every citizen that cares about the natural resources of Florida in a monster way. The wildlife corridor itself is almost 10 million acres. 80% of it is using hunting as a management tool. And when I say as a management tool, it can be anything from predation to a revenue stream to like doing leases, because then it's keeping the land in wild status. So they could be doing hunting leases there. It could be in a public-private partnership, kind of like a Denner Island type situation, where people are able to go hunt on land that is still used for agriculture as well, or ranching. It's a gigantic tool in this state that helps keep the stuff that we care about in this state here. And I don't think that message is conveyed enough to the general public.
It's not, and that's why I wanted you to tell it. I know that story very, very, very well, and that's one of the greatest conservation success stories in the world. And that's called the Pittman-Robertson Act, right?
Well, Pittman-Robertson is the hunting side. Dingell-Johnson is the fishery side. So some people listen to this only fish, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Dingell-Johnson, Senator Debbie Dingell is still in the United States Senate. She's from Alaska. Her grandfather was the one that helped create that act. It's a tremendous story of conservation and of us as sportsmen saying, we're going to put the needs of more ahead of our wallets, and we're going to pay because I know that redfish is going to die. I know he's going to die, but I want to pay because I know that it's going to benefit, and there's now going to be 10 more redfish because that one died. There's now going to be 50 more redfish because that one died. And I'm picking on redfish there. Whatever it is, bass, bluegill, trout, snapper, whatever it is, we are contributing dollars in a big way to ensure conservation continues, not just in our state, that's nationally, like that happens in every state, but it's allocated based off the number of fishing licenses and the amount of public access you have. shoreline, coastline, etc. And on the hunting side, it's the amount of public land and the amount of hunting licenses you sell in your state. It's huge. I tell people all the time, if you want to help conservation, go buy a duck stamp, a hunting license, and a fishing license. You don't have to go.
Yep.
Just go buy them.
So let me ask you a question. How much of the corridor or of the boat ramp or of any of the programs has the group from Oregon or PETA or other animal activists? What percentage of the funding is done by animal activists?
$0. So 0% is what's done by the activists. And I've sat in meetings in rooms at national conferences where the suggestion has been made, why don't we create a program and call it a backpack tax? And I don't want to pick on the birders because I'm a birder at heart. Like I have a bird list. I keep track of what I've seen but why don't we put a tax and call it a backpack tax on backpacks and tents and binoculars and whatever, and call it a backpack tax that does the same thing, that helps trigger. And the brands, and there's some brands out there I would tell you offline that would shock you, that are conservation or environmental brands that were adamant. I was in the room and I watched it unfold. They were adamant that no, we are not interested in any kind of a backpack tax. That is not the model that we want to go down. And I'm like, hold on. We've been doing this since my grandfather was alive, or my great grandfather was alive. He's been buying a hunting license that's been paying for land, paying for access, don't come at me, Oregon. Don't come at me, Wildlife for All, or any of you animal right. Like, we've been doing conservation since before you thought about it, and we're going to be here for a long time. I want to make sure that hunting and fishing are continue to be considered in that conversation because it's so critically important to the conservation story.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that you explained that way, because that is going to be, when you go and you mention this to someone, that you should maybe consider voting yes on Amendment 2. Why? Well, because this reason, the boat ramp that you like to use, the Florida corridor, all of these different situations are funded by anglers. If you take that away, all of that goes away. Well, where does that funding come from? Now you can go back and listen to this 5 times. You can go back and listen to Travis explain it, because he explained it in a way that's very simple for anyone to understand. And you could even take the transcript, you could put it in ChatGPT and say, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, okay? And explain it that way, because I do not think that most people realize, especially the animal rights activists, that $0 are being contributed. And you got to put your money where your mouth is, man. If that's what you want, then you got to come up with some way that you're going to fund it. And they're not doing that. They're not funding. There's nothing. They just want there to be no hunting and fishing. And there's what happens to the game wardens that make sure that there's no hunting and fishing? Okay, they're being paid by this too, right? And the hunting and fishing license, there's money that goes towards conservation, and there's a self-imposed tax on all hunting products, all fishing products that goes towards this. Travis explained it better than I could, and that's why I wanted you to do it. But that information is what you're going to need. It's what you're going to need if you're going to talk to anyone about this. And you should know that anyway if you're a hunter or fisherman, because it's something to be incredibly proud of. That is something that as a group, united together, that is one way that we have been united, is that we've been united at the wallet, at the funding level, because I don't care if you want to shoot a crossbow, or if you're a fly fisherman, or you're a bait fisherman, or you believe in catch and release, or you believe in eating everything you catch. The one thing that we have in common is that everyone needs a license to do that. And then the thing about that license is that money gets distributed to protect the resource, to manage it. And we're the only ones doing it. Like, there's not a backpack tax. And I'm sure that lots of birders and lots of backpackers and lots of bikers would be happy to pay a backpack tax. They would absolutely be happy to pay it. If you're telling me that if I pay this, that I'm going to have, I'm going to make sure that this trail is going to be here for my grandchildren, happy to pay it, right? That's the way hunters and fishermen were. It's a self-imposed tax that we pay. You may not even know you're paying it. but it's something to be very proud of, I think. And it's something to know, where the history of it and what it accounts for. 19% of 10 million acres. Do you know how much money that is? That's unbelievable amounts of money. And it's not only that, but, it's all of these different issues that, we're united at the pocketbook. But if we could be united in our voice, we are going to, actually move the needle towards solutions and towards the one solution that no matter what kind of fishing or hunting you like, the one thing that we all want to be able to do is we want to be able to take our grandchildren and we want to see our great-grandchildren continue to do what we've been able to do. And not just for going out there and hunting and fishing, but because I know that hunting and fishing is providing the funding that allows for lands to be set aside. It allows for protection of those lands. It keeps a developer from coming in and building tract homes or a shopping mall or anything else. And it protects the habitat. So if you're protecting the habitat for the animals that we want to hunt, you're also protecting the animal, the bird. What was it that you said? The rarest bird ever?
Oh, the grasshopper sparrow.
The grasshopper
sparrow.
sparrow.
The crested caracara is like, I get to spend a lot of time on cattle ranches and you see all of this wildlife that everyone is clamoring to see. I get to see it. Yeah. Panthers, bears, bobcats. Like I see that stuff.
Have you seen an uptick in panthers?
Yes.
You have?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Over how many years?
My life. Like I mean, I didn't see a panther until 10 years ago. So I'll tell you the other thing you've seen with panthers is go on like the wildlife corridor page or Florida Conservation of Florida or some of those groups. And I love these groups. These are my friends. These people do incredible work. I like incredible work. Go on their page and scroll and you'll see somebody posted like a game cam pic of a panther, or there's a panther with a close encounter. They never cite it because they'll get just chewed up if they do, but it's always a hunter. It's always a hunter. It's a turkey hunter sitting out there and he's making Yelp calls or whatever. And a panther walks in on that turkey hunter. And the hunter is as fascinated as anyone else is. He's taking a phone video of this panther 10 feet from him and the panther moves off. And like, I don't understand that hatred, because where you see those animals is where you're going to hunt, I run a duck hunting operation. Last year we raised, and I say raised, they blew up on our property, snail kites, which are an endangered species. We banded almost 100 snail kites on that property, an endangered bird. There's 3,000 left in the United States. At one point, we had 300 of them on our property.
Wow.
Because of waterfowl hunting. Like, all of this stuff is folded together, but that story is not something we tell well publicly very often. No. In fact, if you go to our Instagram, we've got that there on my Instagram or All Florida's Instagram. We've got that story pinned. But that's the kind of stuff we need to be talking about more. But I believe a right to fish and hunt is a step in that direction. It's a thing that protects it and allows us to kind of say, hey, we're here, we're about conservation, and we have been for century, and we want to continue to be. The last thing I'll say about this is Teddy Roosevelt, one of the most famous conservationists, he gets invoked all the time. You were talking a minute ago about your grandchildren, and Roosevelt said, conservation is the greatest good for the greatest number, for generations still in the womb of time. And that's what I think about, is getting something like this passed is protecting it for generations that you and I won't know. We will never meet those kids. They'll never speak our name. But the fact is, they're going to be able to, if they choose, go shoot a duck, go shoot a dove, go shoot a quail, go shoot a turkey, go catch a redfish, go catch a snook, go catch a tarpon. They're going to be able to do that stuff because the choices we make now, man, that stuff gets me misty-eyed. Like that gets me right here, because I care so deeply about the stuff that's been so special to me and informed and created who I am. I want to make sure that stuff exists long-term to inform and create new people like that.
Yeah, of course. Maybe, I never even thought about it like this until just this second, but maybe the message that we're telling is, it's obviously hard for somebody who's never hunted or fished to understand what's so special about this. But that's one aspect, is that, yes, I would like for my grandchildren to have the same experiences in the outdoors and to be taught the same thing by the natural world that I've been taught. There are a lot of lessons out there, and that's really amazing. But I think maybe a different message that might be even more effective, and I'm not sure how to craft it into something that could be widespread, but the fact that we pay for the conservation, the hunters and fishermen pay for it. And yes, I would like for my grandchildren to continue to do that, and for children way down the line that I'll never meet to be able to do that. But I also like the idea that by continuing this, it's self-sustaining. You're continuing a way for these lands to be set aside, for them to be protected. You're financially ensuring the future, which I don't think that I've never really seen that. Now, one place that if anyone's interested in this, learning more about the Pittman-Robertson Act and the Dingle, what was it called?
Dingle-Johnson.
Dingle-Johnson Act. The best place that I have seen that illustrates this the very best is Johnny Morris's Wonders of Wildlife Museum in Springfield, Missouri. It is one of the coolest places ever, and throughout the entire museum, if you're ever near it, you have to go if you're a hunter or a fisherman, because it will make you so proud of what we have been able to accomplish as a group together. All the way throughout, it illustrates this message that hunters and fishermen provided the money to do this. They provided the money to do this. Provided the money to do this. It is all the way through the whole museum, and it is a testament to this self-imposed tax and what that money does. Because it's one thing to have just great ideas. It's one thing to have just, emotions tied to something else. But if you can't fund that, it's not, it might last for a year or two, 5 years, 10 years, but it's not going to last through time. And that's what hunters and fishermen have been able to do. So this is something coming up on November 5th, Florida's Amendment 2. And, I want to thank Bernowin for helping us to bring this message to you about anglers uniting. And that is exactly what we can do here on November 5th. You can get together and you can vote for what's important to you. And if you're listening to this and hunting and fishing rights are not important to you, I don't know what you're listening to, but I'm glad you're here too. But that's what we're doing here, and I hope that my intention with this was to talk to Travis and find out exactly what this is. Go through all of the different objections that people seem to have to it, and then you make your own decision. Whether you vote yes or no, that's up to you. But you now know what it's all about, and you now have some additional information that you can use to talk to somebody else about this if it's important to you. If it is, great. If it's not, great. But if you're going to talk to somebody about it, make sure that your information is accurate, and you can go back and listen to this a couple of different times and listen to what Travis said, because I think he did a real good job of explaining all that. And I think if you boil it down to just financial things, it makes a lot of sense.
You got that right.
So you have anything to leave us with, Travis?
No, I said it earlier. My thing that I say all the time is decisions get made by those who show up.
That's it.
Be kind to each other and love Florida. That's the stuff that I like to tell people.
All right, I love it. So we're going to run through we have an abbreviated hot seat that we'll run you through. It's just a series of questions that you answer yes or no to, or as quickly as you can. So you ready?
Okay. Yep. Go.
Fresh or salt?
Salt.
Offshore or inshore?
Inshore.
Fly or spin?
Spin.
Duck hunt or fish?
Duck hunt.
Favorite type of duck?
Model duck.
Model duck. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Favorite type of fish?
Oh, this is going to contradict, but I'm going to say bluegill.
Okay. Love it. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Coffee or tea?
Believe it or not, tea. I'm drinking coffee, but tea usually.
Okay. One place you definitely do not want to go?
Jail.
That's what I thought you might say. I was going to say prison. Okay. And the last thing, the best piece of advice you remember being given?
I say this all the time, but remember where you came from. My dad said that to me. My dad's still alive, but remember where you came from. And I take that to mean, your values, your place, the stuff you care about, who you are, remember where you came from.
Love it. All right. Tell us where people can find out more about All Florida, follow you on social media, reach out to you if they have questions.
Yeah, you can. So All Florida is allfla.org, or the social media is allfla.org. Or you can find me, Travis Thompson. I'm Travis Thompson on social media. Don't get me confused with the rapper, but if you do,
Jake already did.
Let him know. I've actually been retweeted by Jimmy Fallon before on Twitter because he thought
awesome.
I was on his show that night, and I was not. My bars are not that sick. But yeah, you can find me. I'm pretty accessible. I'm pretty easy to find out there, and I love to talk about this stuff with people. Oh, and you can find me at Duck Ranch, and if you ever want to duck hunt, you can find us at Duck Ranch, and we didn't talk about that, but I run the largest duck hunting operation in Florida, and we do pay by the day, and we try to have a good time and show people what makes Florida special, from birds to the ducks are extra.
Do you have guided and unguided hunts, or how do you do it?
We do. We have both. We have DIY and we have guided options. We do lots of programs with new hunters, youth hunters, women's groups. Awesome. I'm passionate about getting as many people into the outdoors of Florida and falling in love with it and seeing it the way I do as possible.
I love it. And where is that located, your duck operation?
So we have a number of locations. We work with some cattle ranchers on conservation easements. So our primary locations are south of Lake Okeechobee. Clewiston would be the closest town, but we also have operations north of the lake as well. Okeechobee,
nice.
Even into Highlands County some.
Nice. I'm sure there'll be lots of people interested in that. All right, Travis, thanks, man. I really appreciate it, and I think we all learned a lot. And go on November 5th, yes or no, but vote either way. All right, it's up to you.
I appreciate it, Tom.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, buddy, for having me.
All right, see ya.